You know how you can remember every single word to a song you haven't heard in like 10 years, but you can't remember what you studied for a test last night? Yeah, what's up with that? Well, we're about to dive into the science of making learning actually stick. And no, this isn't about magic tricks. It's about understanding how your brain is wired and then using that to your advantage.
It's such a familiar feeling, right? You spend hours cramming for an exam. You read, you reread, you highlight, only to wake up the next day and poof, it's just gone. It has to be one of the most frustrating things for anyone trying to learn. You put in all that work, but the results just aren't there.
Okay, first things first. Let's get one thing straight. Forgetting stuff is completely normal. It's actually part of how our memory is supposed to work. But, and this is a big but, the good news is that we are not helpless here. Thanks to decades of research, we found some really powerful science-backed strategies to help us remember way more of what we learn.
So let's start at the very beginning. Before we can even think about remembering something, we have to get that information into our brain in the first place. That process is called encoding. And it turns out our brain has a very specific, kind of cool way it prefers to do this.
So way back in 1971, a psychologist named Alan Pavio came up with this really game-changing idea. It's called dual coding theory. And the core concept is actually pretty simple, but it's so profound. Your brain isn't just one single pipeline for information. Nope, it has two totally separate channels, one for words and one for pictures.
Let's break that down a bit. You've got the verbal channel, which handles what we call symbolic codes. So words, language, text. Think about it. The word DOG is just a symbol, right? It doesn't look or bark like a dog. But then you have the visual channel. That deals with analog codes, pictures, diagrams, mental images that actually look like the thing they represent, like an actual photo of a dog. So here's the critical part. When you learn something using both of those channels, like say you read the definition of a concept and you look at a diagram that explains it, you're basically creating two separate memory traces in your brain for the exact same thing.
And this is just the perfect way to think about it. If one of those anchors happens to slip, you've still got the other one holding that memory firmly in place. This is exactly why just reading a wall of text over and over is often a terrible way to study. You've got to engage that visual channel too.
All right, so you've done it. You successfully encoded some new info using both channels. That's awesome. But how do you hit the save button so all that hard work isn't lost by morning? Well, that brings us to the next crucial step, consolidation.
I mean, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's what separates that fleeting knowledge you forget in a day from real, long-term memory. And as science has shown us over and over again, the answer has everything to do with what you do after you close the textbook. Think of memory consolidation like your brain's nightly file saving and backup process. It takes all those fragile new memories from the day and starts converting them into stable, more permanent files. And who's the undisputed MVP of this whole operation? You guessed it, sleep. While you're out cold, your brain is working overtime, strengthening connections and shielding your new memories from being overwritten. Okay, this leads to a really interesting question. We know sleep is vital, we get it, but is it better to sleep immediately after you learn something, or is it okay to wait a few hours? Does the timing actually make a difference in how well those memories get saved?
Well, lucky for us, a brand new study from 2024 by a team led by Gasparello put this very question to the test. They wanted to see exactly how much the timing of sleep matters for our memory.
The way they set it up was super simple but really smart. They had two groups. The sleep-first group learned some stuff in the evening, and then they went to bed. The wake-first group learned the exact same stuff but in the morning, and then they went about their normal day. Then they tested both groups to see who remembered more.
So what happened after that first 12-hour period? The results were pretty striking. The sleep-first group, the ones who got a full night's sleep right after learning, they forgot way less than the wake-first group, who spent those 12 hours awake getting bombarded with new information.
You can see it really clearly on this chart. After 12 hours, the memory drop-off was way smaller for the group that got to sleep. This basically confirms what we kind of already suspected. Sleep acts like a protective shield for new memories, much better than a period of just being awake. No big surprise there, right?
But wait for it. Here's the twist. When the researchers tested everyone again at the 24-hour mark, after the wake-first group finally got their night of sleep, that initial advantage, it completely disappeared. Their memory performance was suddenly almost identical.
So what does this tell us? It suggests that, yeah, sleeping right after learning might give you a nice little short-term boost, but for long-term retention over 24 hours, the most important thing is simply that you get a good night of sleep within that cycle. Sleep is this powerful, necessary protector of memory, whether it happens immediately or a few hours later.
Okay, so we've got two huge scientific principles on our hands. Dual coding to get information in, and sleep to make it stay. How do we pull all this together into a practical strategy we can actually use every day?
Here is your 3-step battle plan. First, when you're studying, you have to actively engage both channels. Don't just read. If you're learning about a process, draw a little flowchart. Learning a new word, find a picture for it. Second, make a full night's sleep a completely non-negotiable part of your routine. That's when the magic happens. And third, based on this new research, don't stress too much about cramming right before bed. Just make sure you get that solid, restorative sleep sometime within that same 24-hour day.
And look, why does all of this matter? Because it's about studying smarter, not just longer. When you start to align your study habits with how your brain is actually built to work, you can improve how much you remember, cut down on that awful feeling of forgetting everything, and ultimately walk into exams with some real earned confidence.
So the next time you sit down to learn something, remember these principles. This isn't just about passing a test, it's about building a stronger, more reliable memory for life. And as we wrap up, I'll just leave you with this one thought. If you could use these techniques to perfectly lock in and strengthen just one single memory from your life, what would you choose? Something to think about.